So when we're talking about this topic, and we metamorphosize the topic all over the bloody place, this could very easily have gotten into a comparison of the different ways we store stuff, files in the cloud from a personal standpoint, but this is actually going to focus on it from a business standpoint. Of if you're a business owner and you have a bunch of folks, especially if they're either a lot of them work from home or these are remote workers on the road, anything along those lines, how do you take a look at all of the options that are out there? And the difference between something that is, you know, really consumer oriented and the free stuff versus the quote unquote better price stuff. There's a lot of services out there, and this is just a small number of them. And you've also got Azure from Microsoft, you've got Amazon. There's a lot of companies that are coming out with, for lack of a better word, they're getting to be commodity services. And that is essentially that we're going to put files up in the cloud. Now, we're not talking about servers, so we're not talking about services, we're not talking about applications, anything that we're talking about. I want my files to be up there as well as on my computer. Okay, so these are some of the more popular ones that are out. You know, most of us have worked with directly or indirectly Dropbox or even iCloud from Apple, anything along those lines. Now, Microsoft, who, if they ever give out Academy Awards for can't keep a name straight, Microsoft, once again, just like when they originally did Windows 8, remember the user interface? What was it called? Metro, which was actually kind of a cool name. Now it's Windows UI. Or didn't they actually change something else? Or
Modern UI.
Modern UI. Why? Because several months into it, they discovered that somebody already had the Metro. So, guess what? Same thing. There's apparently in England or something, there's a company that was doing Skydrive before Microsoft did. And Microsoft didn't bother checking it out because, England's a rather backwards country. So anyway, so they found out, so even now they are actually starting to roll out the replacement. Instead of being called Skydrive, it's now being called OneDrive. So if you hear about it, I guess the phones literally are just going out today or yesterday. You're going to start seeing some changes. Functionally, they're relatively the same, although they're adding features to it as well. So now, of that, just talking about Skydrive, there's also two versions of Skydrive. There's Skydrive and then there's Skydrive Pro. The Skydrive Pro is really the business version of Skydrive. Okay, it's part of Office 365. It also, and we'll talk about this a wee bit, it's very heavily integrated into SharePoint 2013, especially as SharePoint 2013 is part of Office 365. So when we talk about some of the functionality that's there, especially in terms of collaboration capabilities, alert capabilities, previous versions, it's really when you integrate it with SharePoint that it works very nicely. The nice thing is from the end user perspective, it can be either very seamless and doesn't look any different from Skydrive, or can be very different because of the needs of the end user. So, and we'll talk about that a little bit. And it's got the highest level of app integration if your apps are SharePoint savvy. So for example, you can have all sorts of business intelligence BI consoles and the like that are available in SharePoint, and you can integrate them with Skydrive in terms of report deliveries and things along those lines. So there's some good tools there. So hybrid cloud. We've been talking now for the last couple of years about the cloud and how much more we can charge as consultants when we use the word cloud frequently through our proposals. It's almost as good as they put E in front of something and it sounds cooler. But the fact of the matter is that the whole cloud concept is simply that it's not stored here. It's stored up there. And the more transparent or integrated we can make that, the integration as far as the data out there and the functionality out there and here, the better. Well, the problem is that in some cases we want both. Because if we want to get a decent sized file and it's up there, it's going to take a while to download it. Because our local connections are usually 100 to 1,000 megabits per second. Okay, and a bit is the 1 or 0. Don't worry about that, just worry about the numbers. Whereas usually most internet connections are less than 10. And uploading a lot slower than that. So if I want to get access to a piece of data that's on a server that's local here, I'm going to get it several times faster, 10, 20, 30 times faster than if it's up in the cloud. And then if it's actually on my computer, faster still because there's no data transfer. It's right there. So the hybrid model of the stuff that I really want access to, and I want access to quickly, I want to have it there. So it's locally connected to the network. I also want it when I'm remote, when it's up in the cloud. Or I want it when I'm offline. I'm Amish, and I've just got this device and nothing else. Or I'm not at this computer right now. I'm at somebody else's computer, a kiosk machine or the like. From the end user standpoint, we want to be able to have that flexibility, if it's appropriate, which is going to be a key thing. I want to have that flexibility regardless of where my data is stored. And the only way that will work is hybrid. If the data is actually stored in more than one location, and that the software or the service will actually manage the changes. So if I make a change when I'm offline and it's only done on that computer, that change will find its way up to the cloud. And if this computer is off and someone makes a change to the file in the cloud, it will find its way down to my computer. And I don't want to have to worry about that. Okay? Well, what happens when conflicts happen? You know, I'm offline, so I'll make a change to that document. I turn it off before I connect online again. And then I go over to another machine and I make another change to that document online. So now I've got the same document with two different versions. So we have that conflict. How do we handle that? Different services do a better job. Some do a better job. Some do a worse job. Management on the other side. We've now got all these computers out there. Are they sharing any of that data with other people? Potentially our competition. Okay, that's a challenge because that would be someone purposefully doing that sort of thing. But also, are they sharing too much with their customer? You know, are they basically sharing not only the project, but our core, how we do things? Has it been shared with anybody else other than who they're supposed to be sharing it with? Do we want them to be able to access this data when they're connected or when they're not connected to the network? So if I've got my iPad and my granddaughter likes to borrow my iPad. Sooner or later it's going to be my granddaughter lets me borrow her iPad, but we have discussion on that. Do I want her, who's 5 going on 30, do I want her to have access to these documents? No. Probably not. She's very bright. Probably not. Now, iCloud's free. But is it a good management choice when you're looking to share potentially your data? And that's the core of the topic here. So, consumer options, lack of secure, and again, these are perspective from a management perspective. We don't have security features and controls. So we can't centrally see what everybody is doing. If we gave all of you access, we're not going to. If we gave all of you access to store, you know, whether we gave you all, you know, Skydrive accounts, we gave you all Dropbox accounts, we gave all you, and then we put what we consider to be sensitive data on those, we have no direct way of knowing who you've shared that with, how you've shared it, and all that fun stuff. And by the way, there's a big limitation on this, which we'll get to. So I can't see. So as whether I am corporate management, as in CEO or the like, or I'm IT management, this makes me very nervous. Lack of a management interface, same thing. I mean, if a new person joins the organization or someone leaves the organization, can I easily either allow or remove their abilities to access appropriate data? Can I do that? Lack of compliance. You know, the free stuff is not really that worried about storing data in the cloud encrypted because it's free. They don't get any money out of doing that. So they're not going to offer that as a service, or they'll offer that as a fee-based service. And the data ownership is in question because in some cases, like Google Drive, for example, Google actually has the right to scan your data and to use it. And there's actually terms in their conditions that say they could actually benefit from intellectual property that's drilled and maintained there. Now, that doesn't mean they're going and ripping it off and all that kind of thing, but they will scan it to try to do better as far as focusing marketing to you and the likes. Some of the other guys will do the same thing. Free isn't free. If it's free, they're getting money somehow. Okay? And a couple of the ways: selling data based on usage. In other words, what kind of things are you saving? What are some of the keywords that are in some of the data? All that kind of thing, and partially so that they can aim advertisements directly at you. Selling data based on aggregate, where they take a look and they don't look at your data specifically, but they look at the sum total of everybody's data, the like. And then they throw ads. Every time you go to their portal or you take a look at something, here are these ads that they're going to make you look at. Okay, cool. And that's reasonable. I mean, they're giving you a feature. They're giving you a service. They got to make money somehow. And the one I did not include here, which I should have, is the other way the vendor makes money is this is the lead-in. You're going to try the free service, and then you'll pay for the full featured one. Similarly, okay, we want to increase our revenue, but we also want to decrease our costs. How does the vendor decrease the cost? Simpler infrastructure. I guarantee you they're not as concerned about saving your data for a free service. You're not going to have as many backup servers. You're not going to have as much infrastructure guaranteeing 24/7, 5 nines availability, all that kind of fun stuff. Similarly, less security. For example, encryption. You know, they're not storing the data encrypted. They're not saying they will. They're not promising they will, or anything along those lines. And in some cases, they may be saving the stuff overseas. Why? Because it's cheaper over there. And depending upon who you're working with, that actually may violate some of the agreements that you have with either vendors or other organizations. Less features, obviously, you know, and less control, which just kind of goes hand in hand with the features, but I want to be clear on the control. You may not have the ability to wipe remote workstations. You know, if there's a former employee, can you get into their account and wipe out the stuff on their laptop? So these are some of the services. These are basically the consumer related, and I do need to mention that Dropbox actually has been getting more corporate. They've been adding some additional features, but so far they're add-ons. They're not really, their core product really hasn't matured, in my opinion, to that level. So we have Box, Skydrive Pro, and Anchor are what I would call the business, and we'll talk about why in a few. And then application integration, can you actually use those in your application? So for example, in Word, can you, inside of Word, open up a document that is stored on these places? Or do you have to go to a folder and, you know, redirect and all that kind of fun stuff? Collaboration. Is there some capabilities for collaborating? Collaborating would be essentially where, let's say that you and I were working together on a project and I didn't cause you to get ill by that possibility, so it's good. You and I are working on a project, and there's some documents that we're both going to be working on. So I can create folders that only you have access, but you can work on them, I can work on them, we can both share the updates and all that kind of fun stuff. So it's fairly simple to collaborate, on up to collaboration through SharePoint, which goes above and beyond that, where you can save prior versions and all that kind of fun stuff. And then corporate control. And we'll just call it corporate IT moving forward. Can corporate IT actually look at who I've been giving, and they look at, oh my, you gave access to him, we're going to do something about that. They can actually be alerted when I've given access to other people, who I've given it to. They can also be alerted for when people are actually accessing the data. They can be alerted that I've changed something, you know, as far as, so corporate IT knows what's going on, okay? And audit discovery. You get sued. And part of your responsibility is you have to turn over documents pertaining to this particular case, this particular customer, having these particular words. Can you easily, from one place, look for that information, look for that data? Okay? And search, full text search, and then privacy. And privacy is one of those where, and I was looking over a couple, and there's a couple of websites that I'm putting all this stuff together. Especially with the whole NSA situation, when you talk about privacy, I mean, the default answer is no, you don't. But it's a question of who has access. So, for example, if you are storing all this stuff in the cloud. So we are storing this data at the vendor's site. Does that vendor reserve the right to review that data or to easily surrender that data? And can it even be encrypted so they can't see the data? Similarly, can I not even store it on the cloud? I'm going to store it on a server. So I'm going to have it on a server at our facility, and that will work with everybody's laptop and desktop. So there's nothing stored on anybody else's equipment. It's stored on mine. Now, do either of those methods guarantee privacy? Not necessarily, but it raises the bar some. So the question is, do I have some flexibility in terms of the definition of privacy? Windows Server 2012 R2, in combination with Windows 8.1, actually has this capability built in. So you can actually create a, for lack of a better word, shared cloud storage from a folder that's on your server that'll automatically synchronize with your tablets and with your laptops, even if you're off-site. And it's fairly easy to set up, and it works fairly nicely. So you're going to see, as whether it be the server softwares and the desktop softwares, as they get more and more advanced, as these guys get more and more advanced, every few months you're going to see more features, and you're probably going to see more features for either the same or less money. You know, unless they decide, like Dropbox. When Dropbox added some of the integrated controls, that's an additional function, that's an additional fee. Okay, and this is just a table that shows Skydrive Pro versus Dropbox. And I wanted to use this as give you an idea. Works on PC, Mac, web, iPhone, iPad, Android, Windows Phone. Okay? Which both Skydrive, Dropbox, and most of the other guys do too. Versioning and recovery. Every time I make a document change, does it save the prior version? This is where Skydrive Pro works very nicely because it integrates with SharePoint. And SharePoint is very simple to create that previous version. So what that means is, you know, we were talking about that if person A makes a change to the document, person B makes a change to the document, and it's kind of out of sync or out of kilter, that's okay. We'll keep both the original and the two versions changed, and then we can access those documents and figure out what the appropriate change is. Co-authoring, couple open edit documents with others at the same time, Skydrive Pro can do it. Integrated with Office by default, Skydrive Pro can do it. Note-taking app, you get OneNote included with Skydrive Pro. Sharing files and folders with others, again, the doomsday scenario for you anyway, you know. Document management, oh boy, this is one where you got to be careful. Again, this is integration with SharePoint. So advanced document management, checking out documents. So if you're using the document, it won't allow me to open it, or I can only open it as read-only. Manage large binary files. Actually, Dropbox and some of the simpler services do that better, just simply because SharePoint and a lot of the others are made really for your Word, Excel, PowerPoint, all that kind of fun stuff. You can tag documents. You can actually do social integration with Serve Pro. You can put it on your own server, keep your documents secure, authoring, yada, 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 yada. So really, when you look at Dropbox and you look at a lot of the other ones as well, you're going to see that I can access the files, I can share the files, I can manage, and this is really more just the type of files that we're keeping track of, and I have some security levels included with the business, with the Pro version of Dropbox and some of the other guys. So just doing the grunt, ugh, I'm saving, I'm working on my documents, I'm changing my documents. Most of these guys will do that. Okay? So the actual document storage up there and the synchronizing with the desktops, I don't want to say that's become a commodity, but we're almost at that point where it has been, where it is a commodity. Okay? So, grown-up needs. So I want collaboration and management. I want to share. How many of you have worked with FTP? Okay, file transfer protocol. That's basically the old-fashioned way, you know, 10, 20 years ago, where if we wanted to send somebody a file that was just too big for email, we set up an FTP site. And they logged on to the FTP site, and in some cases they would just see this weird list. Some cases it would look like a Windows file box, depending upon the version and what you saw, and you download or you drag and drop or whatever. But you had to set it up, you had to create the security for it, you had to, if you wanted one FTP site to be that you could get to, another site that you could get to, another site that you'd have to basically set up security for each folder and all that. It's a lot easier, and end users can do this. FTP stuff had to have an IT person. Okay? Expiration dates. So I'm going to share this information with Bob, but not forever, because sooner or later he's going to realize what kind of person he's dealing with. So I'm going to put an expiration on that share so that it's only going to be available for the next 3 months. Because part of the challenge is we look at it, wow, how long has that been there? Do we even know these guys anymore? Granular access. What if I only want those remote salespeople, I only want them to access this data from their laptops. I don't want them using their iPads. I don't want them using their phones. I don't want them using all those machines. So I want to say specifically, you use your company machine for the company data. That's it. So that'd be kind of cool. Same thing for folders. Only these users get access to the folder. I can make this folder accessible to a whole bunch of people in our organization so that we can all, remove and add and share and all that kind of fun stuff. And it'd be really cool if I could do that centralized. So for the whole organization, I can basically manage the users, and then if there are applications for the Androids and the Apple devices and all that kind of thing, so they don't have to just use the web browser. So, and let's talk about the management situations we find ourselves in. Former employee, guy just gave notice today. Okay. He's got a laptop. That laptop's got data. Soon to be former employee. We strike first. They're storing data on the family machine, the scenario I described earlier. He's got the data, but who's he sharing it with? Or she. Computer was lost. Oopsies. And then we've got this folder that has important data. Do we have a copy of it? All of these situations we should have an answer for. The tool should work with us to make this answer a procedural question, not a, oh God, what do we do now question. Now, here's the one thing. On all of these solutions, if the person has access to the folder, or access to the documents, they can get the documents to that other person. So in other words, if we've got access, Bob has access today to the folder, but that access expires on February 28th, and there are just some of the coolest things he wants to. He can basically copy those files over to another folder safely on his computer and do whatever he wants to with them. Okay? These are not true document security tools. Those are really expensive. Okay? These basically protect you against the lazy ones. Okay? User situations, on the other hand, kind of talked about this already. I'm offline. I'm online, but I'm not at my machine. I'm collaborating with a non-employee. This just sounds dirty. I have multiple devices. Okay. Now, first of all, management has to say, here's what you should be able to do in each of these situations. I'm offline. The answer could be, well, when you get back online, get back to work. I'm online, but not on my machine. And the answer could be, when you get back to your machine, you can get back to work. I'm collaborating with non-employees. Well, you're a non-employee too. I have multiple devices. See a doctor. Each of these could be, from a security and control standpoint, you may decide that I don't want these situations for the data or the applications to be accessible. Or you may decide, well, yes, because we want our employees, the whole thing on BYOD, the more access they have to the data and information, the more productive they are. The more access they have to the information, the more control issues and management issues IT has, and the more access they have to information, the more possibilities there are for inappropriate use of the data is. And as long as management has had the conversation and has set the bar, that's the key here. There's no wrong answer to either of those scenarios, as long as they're built within the expectations of the tools and the limitations that management wants to put on the employees. So we're using, on this machine, I've got two products that I'm using. I'm using Skydrive Pro, and I'm also using Anchor. Now Skydrive Pro, as I mentioned, is integrated with SharePoint. And you'll notice here, I'm just in Windows Explorer. Okay? So I have here SharePoint, and I can go ahead, drill into documents, find a document, double-click it, edit it, work on it, do whatever I want to. So from a salesperson standpoint, or a person, again, we don't want to really teach a heck of a lot to, we don't really have to. It's there. So there's no, you have to go to here and you just drill down and know that you drill down into those particular files. SkyDrive is pretty much the same thing. Presentations. And you'll notice that we have these green check marks. That means they're synchronized. If I were to open my tablets or open my phone or the like, I would see these documents. And I'd be able to open those documents, and they would work very nicely. Anchor works pretty much the same way. We'll get into that in a minute. Similarly, if I go into Word, and this is 2013, you'll notice that my recent documents include documents that are in SharePoint or SkyDrive or Anchor. So inside of Office, it's keeping track of when I'm going after these shared documents. And the neat thing about 2013 is that if I brought out my tablet, it would show the same recent documents. So my recent documents is user-based. Okay? That's the integration. When we talk about integration with applications, because I don't want these salespeople to have to, oh yeah, if you want to open SkyDrive documents, you got to go through this. Or if you do it, you got to go through this. I don't care. Let them figure it. I mean, they can do it whichever way they want to. So however they've been used to doing it, they can do it the same way. If I say I want to open other documents, again, my recent documents, there's my SkyDrive, there's my SharePoint. So here's my SharePoint. I'm going to go to Team Sites. I'll go to Document Libraries. And we'll just go to Resumes. And this is a list of resumes we've got. I'll click on this. It'll now synchronize to this desktop. Right there. That's all I had to do. Just go.
It doesn't matter what device you use to get to it.
Correct. Okay. So all I had to do, and you'll notice now that the icon here is a little arrows, circular arrows. That's because it's synchronizing. Does it burp on occasion? I know this will come as a shock, but yes. I know we all thought everything works fine 100% of the time. If you try to synchronize like a couple thousand documents at once, it's going to hurl. I can share it. So I could just right-click on Skydrive Pro, click Share, and boom. I can just specify who I want to share it with. I've already got this shared. Whether or not this person can edit. And it'll send them an email with a link to do so. And this can be anyone. So again, now, from a management standpoint, I don't have great tools to track this. That's my concern. Okay? Now, the cost for this is relatively low. If you're doing 365, the mailboxes for the email portion of this is $4 a month per user, or per mailbox, excuse me. So if you have an organization that has 10 mailboxes, you're looking at basically $40 a month, and that takes care of your email, your spam, all that good fun stuff. And then to add the Skydrive Pro with the 25 gig of storage per user, also would add the SharePoint, also would add Link, which is a cool communication tool. That's an additional $4. And you don't have to do that for everybody. You can basically say, we only want those tools for 6 of the people. So for 6 of your users, you're paying $8 a month. For 4 of your users, you're only paying $4 a month. And boom, it's there. And it's relatively easy to set up. Now, I will say, SharePoint sites are tricky. It's very easy. It's incredibly easy to create a really bad SharePoint site. So there are some security issues that you have to keep track of as far as who has access to what, document library, shared folders, all that good fun stuff, but fairly straightforward. Okay. So I like Skydrive Pro. As far as I'm concerned, Skydrive is right there with Dropbox and iCloud and everybody else. But Skydrive Pro gives me a much easier synchronization target. It's easier to work. It integrates with SharePoint, does all those things relatively nicely. Anchor is a relatively new product. It's been out for about a year or so. It was recently bought by eFolder. And eFolder is a company that we've been working with since about our start. That they are a cloud storage. They handle backup disaster recovery. Anyone who's working with us with the BDRs and the like, that's who we're using. And they store things in a HIPAA, SOX compliance, also have recovery tools, all that kind of yada, yada, yada. What Anchor does is exactly what we've been talking about. And here's the shock. All of those limitations on the management side, Anchor does a decent job. Not fantastic, because nobody does fantastic that's on the price level for SMBs. But does a pretty good job as far as managing and maintaining it. And I may ask Kevin to correct me on a couple of things here, more so than usual, you know. And I want you to understand, as far as Anchor goes, we are, so this is one of those where you're paying for your pizza, I guess, I don't know. We are a reseller of this service, so take what we say with a grain of salt, okay, because I'm going to tell you how wonderful it is, blah, blah, blah. So in any case, what you do here is this is the administrative console, which can either be managed by you for your organization or it can be managed by us. Doesn't matter. And what we do is we have accounts, guests, who will be people outside of your organization, machines, specific shares, so we can create folders that are actually shared throughout the organization from the external, not just individuals, okay? Backups, we can actually set up a backup for a machine. This is where we would kind of, now we're going to actually do backups for this particular folder. So we could have a person who's on the road and we want to back up these particular folders. We're not actually sharing them with anybody, we just want to back them up, in which case this will behave more or less like a Carbonite or the like for those particular folders. We also can see what the activity is. And you'll notice, we've got, here's the recent activity, here's what's been going on lately with the account. So it'll actually tell me who's been accessing what, who's been doing what. And we can also go into settings. We can allocate total space to the organization. We can then allocate space to the individual users or shared folders or anything along those lines. So from a management standpoint, we now have the ability to basically say, here's how much. You only need 1 gigabyte of storage. You need 10. So we're going to give you 15 and we're going to give you 3. And then we'll send you automatically emails when you get 50% or 70% consumed, so that you know that you need to take a look at something. So if we have the situation, someone just gave notice, we go here, we unlink the machine, we tell it to remove the data. Next time, it has to be connected to the internet, but next time it's connected to the internet, it's going to remove that information. Okay? So the employee who says they're leaving, or the employee who is going to find out they're leaving, we right now very simply one-stop shopping, and we can take a look at any machine that they're connecting to, and we can remove the data from that machine. And again, the nice thing here is that this is the dashboard for the entire organization. So you don't have to go log in for this user, log in for this user, so on and so forth. Similarly, we can set up backups. So we have backup folders. So we can go in, connect to any of the machines that these folks have been using, and we can specify on those machines which folder do we want to back up. And notice I'm not on the machine. I can do that from here. Create a guest account. So the nice thing that we like about this is that, number one, this actually does integrate with Active Directory in a limited manner. Not as much as we'd like it to. But this will take users from your network, and we'll then have to set the permissions on the folders here. It won't pull NTFS permissions or the like. The other thing is we can actually take an existing network share that's on your server and essentially make it so that that's replicated up here. So when someone's in the office, they go to the G drive. When someone is not at the office, they go through the interface that we showed earlier. I would basically say let's talk about that on 3 levels. The first level is, seriously, I don't care. We're just looking to share some files. In which case, the Skydrive, the Dropbox, any of those guys are going to be okay for you to save your files so that you can use on different machines and all that kind of stuff. If you're a small organization and you want to start doing this, but you're not too worried about having that top-level management, but you want to be able, then Skydrive Pro as part of Office 365, I think is a very good tool. If, however, you actually do want to have some level of centralized, whether it's us centrally managing it, which would be the best because we're fun, or for your organization to centrally manage, or a combination between them, so far we feel Anchor is a very good product. But it's one of those where your mileage may vary. So they all have their place. They all have their place, if that makes sense. And to go through these real quickly, create the accounts. Yeah, and you can actually get usage reports, multiple phone, blah, blah, blah. This also has a good amount of encryption, which is here. So it's PCI compliant data center. They are working on the HIPAA compliance. I don't think that's been done yet. I haven't heard anything to that effect, but it should be soon. But if you're looking for security, the Anchor is the best as far as the security goes. Any other questions, comments, anything along those lines? Was this helpful? Yeah. Cool. All right. Yay.